Hey, what's up, everyone? Matt Montanez here, and I'm bringing you another plugins in depth video. And this one's crazy, right? I just stumbled upon this because I have the gold bundle with waves, and this plugin's insane. It's just exactly what I needed for this project that I'm working on here. It's called February 29th by Be Nice. It'll be out very soon in September, so look out for that. So what happened was, and my issue was that the producer sent the drums all in one stem. So the kick, snare, hats are all together. And I was like, dang, dude, I can't really manipulate nothing like that. And I didn't want to bug him either. It's like, let me just figure it out. I pulled up this bad boy Vitamin, and it's exactly what I needed. You can use it on like drum stems, vocals. You can use it on the final mix or even on the master. What this plugin is, it's a multi-band harmonics enhancer. Think kind of like a multi-band compressor where it's compressing just certain sections, but this is adding harmonics to those sections instead of compressing. And that's insane. But this plugin goes even further than that, right? Let me just go over really fast. You got your input where you can gain stage the entire track real quick. You got an output so you can, match the input and output. You got your crossover section here, which you can actually set. You just grab here, move left and right, set your crossover. You got your direct signal, because what this plugin does automatically is it's mixing in the direct with the wet signal. So keep that in mind. That's what that's doing. So you got direct. And then this section here with all these faders is your bands, your 5 bands, the lows, low mids, all the way to the highs. And this is where you're pushing to actually add harmonics into those sections. Solo buttons to just hear those sections in the harmonics, and a bypass section so you can bypass. And if you hit solo and bypass together, which is a cool little trick, you can actually hear just the direct signal. If you just hit solo, you hear them mixed, the direct with the wet signal. You got a punch, so you can add a little more punch to it, so it can add some crispiness to like a snare or something, or like vocals. It adds presence to the transients to each frequency there. If you bring it down, it's actually attenuating them. So it's adding warmth and making things rounder, like smoother and stuff. So it's really, really dope. Of course, you got your little trim button, Waves adds that in all of them, where you tap it and then it messes with the output. But get this, it also has the width section, right? The width section could really just make things wide and of course mono. When it's at 1 like this, that's gonna keep it neutral, basically how the signal is. Below 1, it's collapsing the stereo image, making it mono. All the way 0 is mono, and then underneath 1, it's just making it narrower and narrower. And that's cool, especially when you're working with like vinyl. So I bypassed all my processing. I ended up not needing most of it. I think I just brought in this EQ, but I'm gonna leave it bypassed for now, just so you can hear this, which is really dope. I'm gonna bypass this effect. I'm gonna hit play, and then I'm gonna toggle it on and off so you can hear what it's doing. And this is just for the drums for now. So you hear the high end, it's getting wider, and it almost sounds brighter because of that. I got the snare to have a little more crispiness by this high mid band, and then the lows get a little fuller. And that's what I want. I wanted more fullness, because without it, that kick drum just sounded too thin for my taste. I wanted a bit fuller. So that's why I added this bad boy. And I was just able to manipulate all that with this one plugin, so it was dope. The punch is actually default on 3, I think. Yeah, so I didn't really add anything to punch, but it does it itself. All right, so let me plug this in. And then I'm going to mess with this so you guys can hear it. So I'm going to bring this down all the way to 0. I think it was at 34. Just click this back. Yep, 34. So let's go to 0, and then I'll slowly boost it. And I'm going to hit solo so you just hear this band. So keep that in mind when you're working with plugins that have crossovers, because it's always going to boost a little bit after and a little bit before. Okay, so let's solo the low end here. And because, like I said, I wanted more fullness in that low end. That's what we're going to do first. Solo the low end, and we're just going to boost it up and hear what happens. So it really just added a lot of harmonics there, so you can hear like a little distortion stuff, and that's cool because it helps cut through in the mix, especially since we actually have a bass line in here, and that's right here. So really dope. I was like, all right, I like that. Let's keep it around 34. I didn't add no width to it. I just left it at 1. I didn't think it needed it. Let's check out the low mids now. So you can tell that it has more of a knock, and I was like, dope, I like that, let's keep that in there. I guess you can say too that these solo buttons are kind of like the magic of this plugin, because not a lot of plugins let you listen to it like this, except if they have crossovers and stuff. I left the mids as is. I didn't think it needed it, and then I moved over to the high mids. And the high mids because I want a little more crispiness in that snare because of the punch, so that's what I went with. Let's check out that. I only went up about 12, and this goes from 0 dB to 48 dB. I didn't mention that. Basically, that's what you can add about 48 dB of harmonic. You can hear it just made it a little bit brighter, and I think that's where the brightness came in when I was talking about it. A little bit more crispiness to that snare and a little bit more on those hi-hats. For the hi-hat section, all I did was add the width there. And really cool. So I'm gonna mono that and we'll check it out again. So really dope, right? Like this plugin's pretty versatile as is. What I want to show you too is that punch. So here's the punch. I'm gonna bring it down to 0 so you can check that out. I actually like it now with a little bit more punch in there. I don't know why I didn't add more of that. And then if you want, after you do your settings, you can also touch like this master one. You can move them all up and down together. But that's everything. So since these are off, if I try to move it down, it doesn't go down. I have to move them all up first and then I could come down. Same with these guys, but since none of them are maxed out, then we're good to go. You can mess with the crossovers. Like I said, you can just drag them over and you got a lot of wiggle room for this. And let's hear that again in context this time. And I'll bypass it so you can hear that. And you can hear that kick really cuts through better with that bass now. And that's what I really needed for this record. Here's a couple of things to keep in mind is the width thing, it only works on stereo track. If you're gonna throw it on a vocal, for example, and the vocal is a mono track. Search, and let's go vitamin. So here's the vitamin. And as you can see, you're missing the entire width section. So you don't even get it in the mono, but you get everything else. You got your lows to highs, the trim, the punch, the harmonic section to boost, direct, and then you also got your input to gain stage. You just lose the width. The width is only in stereo section. If you want to add width to your vocals, you have to bust it to an oct or send the output to an oct. Let's pull this bad boy out and let's drop it on my lead vocal aux. And let's say I want to add width, right, to like the high, then I can do it here. And let's hear how that sounds actually, right? Let's see what that sounds like. Why not, Matt? Let's go a little crazy today and see what that sounds like. So let's highlight that, solo that.
I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I...
Actually, that kind of makes his vocals sound kind of cool, just like that. And I didn't use this in the mix, but I'm just saying, it's kind of cool. Let's see how that sounds.
I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to...
And I forgot to bring in my EQ, but that pretty much tamed that low end just a little bit more because of that distortion was just a bit too much for me. And then also it tamed the hats. But let me bypass these so I can really just like focus on this vocal, just this mess with this a little bit more because it's kind of cool on a vocal.
I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hate.
Let's go to the 7K crossover section because you know they say that's the rich sound. Let's see what that sounds like and just boost the heck out of it. So let's go to 7K, 7,000. Bring that down. And that's so.
Ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to I cry alone when I ran the streets.
Actually sounds pretty good. I like that on a vocal. I might use that more.
How many nights should I cry alone when I ran the streets cause I hated home, so I ran the game to cope with the pain and weight on my brain. I weighed out them grams, not Instagram, I need Insta cash. Got me a flash, cops on my ass, tried not to crash the getaway car, I had to go hard. This that revenge, AMG might hop out of Benz, might pop out it.
Very, very dope. So like I said, you can use this plugin on a lot of stuff, on vocals, drum stems, final mix, because as you can tell, you get full control. So if you just want a little bit more crispiness, like in the hi-hats or something, or the high end, you can just boost those harmonics there. Want a little more beefiness and punchiness, you can just boost the low end and just mess with those crossovers just a hair. Add a little width to the midsection. Boom. That'll sound great, you know, on a master. So yeah, this plugin's dope. I highly recommend it. I'm going to be messing with it a lot more. As you can tell, the vocals did come out kind of cool with it. Of course, I just need a little more tweaking. It was just quick throwing stuff around. As always, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. And if you guys really want to catch this plugin, I'm going to put a link in the description below. And you guys can even get it for extra percentage off on top of Waves discount. So that's always good, right? Saving a little extra money. So don't forget to hit that link below and check that out. And as always, keep creating music, guys. Take care.